Yes, I'm here with LL, the anonymous LL, and we are going to summarize the Grimm brothers story, The Knapsack, the Hat, and the Horn, and then discuss it.
So the story starts with three brothers living in poverty, and it gets to the point where they have nothing to eat and drink. So they tell themselves that it's time to head out and try to find a way out of the poverty. So they go into a forest and they find a hill made out of silver. And I think one of the eldest brother, he decides that he's found what he wants and that he's satisfied with the silver. So he takes as much silver from the hill as he can and he goes back home. But then the other two brothers, they decide to keep going to see if they can find something even better. So they keep walking and then um, they come across another hill, and this time it's made out of gold. So the second eldest decides that he's satisfied and he takes as much gold as he can into his pockets and he decides to go back home. And this leaves the third brother. He decides that silver and gold aren't enough for him. He says that they don't move him. So he's
Mhm.
going to keep on walking through the forest. And he keeps walking and walking and he runs out of food and water to drink. And
Mhm.
so he decides to climb up a tree to see how much he has to go further. And he sees that it's endless. And as far as he could see, there's still forest. But he still wishes to keep going. But he's his body is kind of failing from a lack of food. Um, so when he climbs down, he's wishing for food, and he once he's down, he sees that uh, there's actually like food comes out. There's like a tablecloth with food laid out, and it's actually a feast. And he's astounded that his wish has been fulfilled, and he just doesn't question it, and he eats his fill of the food and takes the tablecloth with him. So yeah, he takes the tablecloth with him, and he's continuing on to his journey to find something greater than the gold and silver. And he comes across a charcoal burner. Um, and the burner, they greet each other, and the charcoal burner offers to have potatoes with him that he's roasting on the fire or the charcoal. And the traveler, he tells him that he has uh, actually something better, and he takes out his little cloth and wishes for a feast. And the charcoal burner is impressed and eats from the tablecloth. And once they're finished eating, the charcoal burner tells him that he would like to exchange something for the tablecloth, and he tells him that he has an old knapsack. And if he hits the knapsack, six soldiers come and they do whatever bidding he wishes.
Mhm.
So the traveler accepts and he gives the charcoal burner the tablecloth. But once he takes the knapsack, he tests it to make sure that it does as the charcoal burner says. And it does. So like he calls upon the six soldiers and he sends them back to the charcoal burner to get the tablecloth back. Uh, so they accomplish that, and now he has the knapsack and the tablecloth, and he keeps going into the forest. And he comes across a second charcoal burner, and it's similar. Like the burner offers him potatoes without the drippings they specify. And the charcoal burner once again says that he has a feast, and he takes out the tablecloth, and the charcoal burner again is impressed and offers him a hat. And I think the hat's powers are that if he like spins the hat, uh, I think cannons come out or unleash.
Yeah, fire.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
he turns the hat on his head.
hmm So they complete the exchange, but once again, the traveler, I think he uses the soldiers again against
Mm.
the struggle burner, and they retrieve the tablecloth back. So now he has the cloth, the knapsack, and the hat. Um, and he finally comes across the third charcoal burner, and this one all has a horn. It's the same kind of exchange happens, but for the horn this time. And the horn makes it so that walls and fortifications come crashing down. Um, so they do the exchange again, and he once again uses the soldiers against this burner. So now he has all three magical items back, and the knapsack, and the tablecloth. Uh, and now he doesn't seem to know what to do, so he goes back home. And by the time he gets back home, his brothers had used the gold and silver to build themselves a fancy home, and they're prosperous. Um, but when they see him, they see that he looks like a beggar with an old knapsack, a hat, and the horn, and they reject him. Um, I think they don't believe that he's their brother.
That's
Um,
right. Yeah.
so
Yeah,
that angers.
they think their brother would come back all decked out and, obviously rich, famous, I mean rich and prosperous,
Mhm.
glorious.
Yeah, this angers the third brother, and he decides to use his knapsack against his brothers. So he calls upon the soldiers, and he uses uh the horn the horn and the hat against them too, and he destroys their house. And, and it's such a disturbance that others try to help the brothers, but they can't get through to help really.
Yeah.
So the news reaches the king, and he sends his forces over there, but they're not successful either. Um, the traveler then uses uh, the position he's in to demand that the king give him his princess as a wife, in order to for the king to still keep his crown. So the king agrees, and they have a wedding. But only the princess isn't happy about it, of course, and she's upset that she's marrying someone of low status. Uh,
Yeah. And who
so,
wore such a shabby hat and an old knapsack?
mhm. So yeah, she starts plotting to get out of the her situation. So, on their wedding night, she's beside him, and she complains about the knapsack, saying that it's ugly and disfigures him. And he explains to her that the knapsack is special and that it gives him powers. Um, so she kind of seduces him, and when he's not paying attention, she runs away with the knapsack, and she commands the soldiers from the knapsack to run him off. Um, so yeah, they chase him out of the castle, and but luckily his hat saves him. So he uses the hat and starts unleashing the cannons. Um, and once this happens, the princess realizes she can't win right now. So she kind of begs him to stop, and uh, says that she loves him and gets back on his good side again. Um, so yeah, they're back together, and I think she fools him again, and this time she steals the hat too with the cannons, and tries to use it against him. And I think this third time, he is so angry that he uses the horn, and the horn knocks down the castle and kills the king and the princess. And um, and I think not just the castle, but just the towns and the villages, they're all destroyed. And since there's no one left against him, he makes himself king of the whole country.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. He almost destroys the whole kingdom, becoming king or staying king.
Mm.
Yeah. What did you think about this story?
I didn't, yeah, it just felt very ominous to me, just how people's hearts turn when they get power
Mm.
and, and have like an unchecked ego
Mm.
or something like that. So yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't view it very positively.
The
So
hero of the story, the protagonist.
yeah, he didn't seem like a hero to me.
Mm.
But
Well, I
yeah,
think you can view it the other way around. Instead of morality tale, view it as more like a cautionary tale and look at the actions of all the other characters. Um, yeah. I mean, maybe we'll go through the story just from the beginning to the end. So yeah, starts off like many stories with a need. The three brothers, of course. There's always three, and they're in poverty, so they need to go out into the world to make something of themselves. And they kind of go on this linear journey, right? And they come to a hill of silver, and there's always this deliberation, and the first one decides, okay, that this is good enough for me. So there's this idea they can't go back and forth. They have to go on this journey as far as they want to go, and then they go back home, and that is like who they will be the rest of their lives. That is their destiny or their fate. And the second brother, they go further, go to Hill of Gold. So same type of thing, but just much more valuable by going further on his journey, but still, he's still within the realm of material kind of wealth and normal life. He was a poor type of guy. Now he'll be a wealthier type of guy, but he's still the same person. But he goes back. And then the third brother keeps going forward, but he goes into a different kind of journey now. He starts starving to death. He goes into another forest that is much bigger in scope. So he's in like another world. He's in another type of place. And then he doesn't keep going through the forest. He wonders about it. So he tries to have a bigger kind of idea, and then he climbs a tree and he looks all around and he sees that it's vast. There's not an end to the trees. There's this idea of eternity, which is different, a different kind of thing than what the first two brothers were satisfied with beholding and with having in life. So then, yeah, he descends from that tree, and in descending is reminded of his body and the hunger in his belly. So there's this, I don't know, this dichotomy or this tension between his sort of his spirit, which wants to encompass the whole world, I guess, like an Alexander the Great type of conqueror or something we see later in the story, or his belly, what his body needs. And then he makes this wish. So that was the end of the first part of the story and the beginning of the second, I guess, when he went, or maybe when it was when he went into this big kind of endless forest. But this seems like a new going forward in the story when he makes this wish. And this often happens in these stories. Starts with a need and then goes to someone making a conscious wish to the universe, and then something comes back. It could be a frog telling sleeping beauties, parents that they're going to have a child. And in this case, it is there's no voice or anything, but or no magical animal or being. It's just this knapsack. It's just these things Which it seems like, yeah, this story is about having and, using things rather than being something new, you know. And as you pointed out, this brother is egotistical. He doesn't become more wise or anything like that. He just becomes someone with more stuff. He, like his brothers, he goes through life without changing that much, but having more stuff. So yeah, he gets this gift, which is not in the title of the story, but this is the gift: food, bodily necessity that negotiated with others allows him to get everything else. And I think this story is not so much a morality tale about the goodness or badness of what the brother did, but more like the other characters of the story. They're satisfied with merely having their bodily needs kind of met, and he is not. Of course, we judge him for sort of almost destroying a kingdom and all that stuff, but
Mhm.
I think you could, like I said, view it backwards. And you could think of it like in your kingdom, what are gifts being used for? You know, your the intellectual or artistic gifts of your community, are they being used for kind of, are they not being used, basically, I guess you could say, not being used well, like in this story, after he has the magical endlessly refilling knapsack, which kind of, these may be echoes of like the parable of the in the Bible, the parallel of the loaves. Excuse me, did I say parallel? Parable of the loaves and the fishes. This cornucopia. After the bodily needs are met, what happens? You know, and so he meets this charcoal burner. This person's living in abject poverty, covered in coal. They don't even have any sort of drippings or seasonings besides salt for their potatoes, and that's their sole meal. But they have this wonderful gift over here that could do a lot, but they're doing nothing with it. And they're just sitting there in the forest, burning coal. So they're using the gifts of the forest around them, what they can see with their eye, but they're not imagining more what they could be doing with first the knapsack, the second charcoal burner with the gift of the hat, the third charcoal burner with the gift of the horn. Although, yes, I acknowledge, yeah, those are gifts that are military gifts. So, you could kind of view that negatively or something like that because it's not used in a defensive war or something. But it's just, I don't know. They're very powerful. They're literally power, and these people are not using them. So maybe it's like they use them or lose them. But anyway, yeah, I've been talking for a while. But yeah, what do you think of all that?
Um, yeah, the story just had me also thinking that he's kind of challenging the world and social order.
Mm,
Part like because afterwards he starts trying to enter the nobility and politics, like you had mentioned off
mm,
camera,
mm,
as well by trying to. He demands the king hand over his daughter, the princess, in exchange for him to stop with the uh, destruction he was causing with his brothers when he fought with them.
mm. Yeah. Yeah, he
Mm,
was unacknowledged at home, and then he decides to destroy them for their insolence or their lack of
mm,
acknowledgement. He's
mm,
he's now a great man, or like you just said, with great power anyway. And he wants to be acknowledged. And eventually, if he won't be acknowledged by the princess, then he just destroys a lot of the kingdom just to.
yeah.
Although, I mean, there's always pushback from from the others,
Yeah,
pushback from
because
his brothers and pushback from the princess who tries to take his stuff. And that's what leads to
yeah,
their destruction.
yeah, and like I guess the pushback from the brothers was pretty minimal because yeah, they don't have the stuff the king has, so it was pretty easy. But then with the king and his daughter, like there's more plotting, and, and yeah, he kind of starts losing the magical tools sometimes, but he still gets them back eventually when
Mm,
the daughter steals them.
mm,
Um,
yeah. Another aspect of this story is people being sort of hidden, um, or the people who seem the shabbiest are the ones with the most gift. Like he gets the knapsack, and maybe when he's starving and he's alone in this vastness, so he seems like nothing, but then that's when he expresses a wish, an intention, a desire, and then he gets the knapsack, and then he goes on to see the three charcoal burners, and they're covered in soot and they're poor. Again, they seem like they don't have much, but the fact that he has something to offer gets him the knapsack. And the fact that they don't have much, and excuse me, they don't look like much, but they have everything, I think seems key to the story. Because when the brother goes back home, he's shabby, but he has everything. I think that's the important part. And his brothers are now decked out in like a nice little estate, gold and silver, right? They don't have much, but they look like they have everything. And so is later on the king and his daughter. So the daughter, maybe you could say she doesn't have much in that she has some ability to at guile, but she's not necessarily very virtuous, or there's no obvious quote unquote gifts that she has.
yeah, and I guess that king has like the illusion of power, but he can't really do anything
Yeah.
either
Yeah.
against the traveler.
Yeah, he doesn't have enough martial power compared to the traveler. Yeah. Yeah, he was maybe born with it, but he didn't risk anything. He didn't wish for it. I think that's what this story is about, this
Mm.
striving for this wish. You could view that as material success in this world, or spiritual kind of uh, ascent, enlightenment, or any kinds of character gifts or anything which will maybe come in someone that you wouldn't expect it to. But I think the point is not what it'll look like, but this story teaches you to not judge based on appearances. And because appearances can be wrong or can be right, but when you judge wrong, the cost of judging wrongly based on appearances, I think is what it's warning us against. If you're kind to someone who seems shabby and they don't really have any gifts, then you're no worse off. And in fact, you're probably better off because you didn't stroke your ego, you didn't inflate yourself. But the cost of wrongly judging someone who looks quote unquote shabby and they do have gifts, you could lose your whole kingdom. You could lose your daughter. You could lose your life. That's, I think, the kind of lesson of this story. And that, yeah, people get their gifts. I don't know how many times I'm going to use air quotes in this podcast, but people do get their gifts from going further. So I can think of that as in spiritual or in any type of real progress in life. You do have to risk. You do have to ignore the bodily desires and the desire for pleasure or to avoid pain. You know, that's what he does, and he goes beyond the normal forest into this everlasting forest and then climbs up to a tree and sees far. He does have an intention. He wishes for something more. He expresses that wish. He gets the food, and that now he is able to negotiate. And then yeah, the fact that they are willing to trade something that can bring power, something that is powerful just for a sumptuous meal, an everlasting sumptuous meal shows that maybe they're not worthy of even having that. There's I think that's the logic of the story. You know, you can't. Maybe you're not supposed to look at the content of the story so much as the logic of it. You know, you see the plot not for the specific nodes along the plot, but for the logic of the movement forward in the story.
I think a lot of those were Old Testament. Um, yeah, just one thing I noticed also was the horn specifically just reminded me of what biblical references where whenever like an angel sounds a horn, it sometimes signals destruction. Um,
Right. Yeah.
and I think other times it may have signaled positive things too, but I remember the destruction specifically,
Mm.
more
Yeah.
destruction of villages and things like that.
Mm. Yeah, and that's what he does at the end here. He's the angel of destruction for
Mm.
this supposedly arrogant city or this city that's kind of stayed and hasn't it doesn't have dynamism or clear seeing or doesn't know, you know, doesn't know certain things like to not mess with the wrong hombre or something, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't say that. Interestingly, just thinking of leadership, I mean it's very understandable that the king would want to deal with a disturbance in the realm. Like when this guy's beating up on his brothers, he I don't know if we mentioned it, but he instructed his corporal and six men or however many, you know, soldiers he got out of that knapsack. He instructed them to beat his brothers with rods until they remembered who he was.
Mhm.
But so he's causing a lot of destruction. So the a good king should, you know, bring his troops over there. But they got whooped, and I'm just wondering if I'm still, you know, I told you not to, that we don't have to, shouldn't view it as a morality tale, but I'm still wondering at the justification for the destruction of the kingdom. I see with the king's daughter, she judges the youngest brother based on appearances, but and so, you know, and then she tries to take his stuff. So, I mean, I don't know. That's, you know, you shouldn't do that in the story, you know, and get killed for that. But the king, is he a bad king? But I don't see much there. You can't tell if he's good or bad. It's just more like,
Mhm.
I think the logic of the story, there's this relentless pursuit of this this guy with this wanting to push his luck. He's you know, he's literally going forward and he's trying to get as much luck as he can, and he takes it all the way. But I do wonder if he had been acknowledged by his brothers, if he had, you looked at that as like this overinflated ego. But I wondered if it's just playing devil's advocate or just wondering as to the deeper logic of the story, if it's about when you have gone out in the world and risked and had true intention and wish to the universe and have worked, have have used your guile or wits or whatever you want to say in this beyond world and gotten gifts, and you come back and you're not even recognized by for who you are now, by by your home, you know. I guess this then that person would you would want them to be wise and to simply accept things and to be calm with knowing who they really are. But the logic seems to be that he wants acknowledgement. And if he's not going to get it here, then he's going to get it somewhere else. I don't know. Yeah, I guess I do see that as kind of ego. But on the other side, as a cautionary tale, someone with great gifts, maybe be careful around them and be humble and kind and understand that appearances can be deceiving, basically be virtuous, like or or you might be damned even if you don't supposedly deserve it. But I was telling you offline that this is very much like the Franz Xavier von Schoenworth story in the Turnip Princess book, um, called The Scorned Princess. And there's some differences in the gifts. There's some little plot parts that are different, but the this general story is very, very similar to that one. And it's also about, ego, or don't, being scorned, and what someone with a lot of power can do if they're scorned. So it's kind of a playing out of that emotion. And but it ends the same way. And in the Scorned Princess, the brother's named. He's named Fortunatus, and in this one, he talks a lot about trying to get his fortune. But there he's actually named, and he ends up making his way to the kingdom. And actually, he doesn't really want to go for the princess, but the princess really likes him. And when he scorns her, that's when she starts to plot. So again, it is about the princess's personal feelings rather than some larger kind of intention for the kingdom, which to me indicates not with the king, but at least with the princess, some bad leadership, that she's acting based on personal motives, and feelings. And it ends poorly in both and in that story also, the when he topples the walls of the kingdom, they crash down on the princess and the king, killing them. But there could be a little of the energy of the sort of post Black Plague in Europe, kind of social economic mobility of skilled people, skilled tradesmen moving around, and maybe still encountering the scorn, the walls of the landed nobility. It doesn't matter what kind of gifts you have, you're still shabby in our eyes, and we're not going to let you into our worlds, and we're going to still try to put you down. And if you try to put up too much of a fight, we're really going to put you down. So maybe this story is in some way a fantasy of what someone would do, someone treated like that would maybe want to do to the kingdom that treats them that way. Yeah, but it's different in the modern world with somewhat, at least with modern capitalism. There's maybe someone who's really, really smart and ambitious, can do a lot more than in that world. But yeah, yeah, I kind of view this as like a cautionary tale and maybe just the playing out of that ambitious energy and be careful how you treat people and how you talk to people. Kind of look for what's really there, whether rather than what kind of appeals to your senses. That seems like a good rule in life as well. You know, what is salient to us isn't always what is important, and to kind of have clear vision. Okay, well, anything more about this story?
Not so far for me.
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah, maybe we'll choose another story next time, but good talking to you.